Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to learn chapter 22 in H.A.Robert's philosophy, disease classification. And I have segmented this chapter into two parts, part A and part B, where in part A we will just understand how he has classified disease, and in coming chapters it discusses about psora, syphilis and psychosis. So in this chapter you will be having about psora that I will be explaining part B. What does this chapter says? Chapter overview. So Robert is showing in this chapter that how Hahnemann, genius person, as a scientific classifier, stands side by side with the greats like Linnaeus, who classified plants, and Cuvier, who classified animals. So in your school times that you have studied in class 11 and 12 that about Linnaeus and Cuvier, who classified plant kingdom and animal kingdom. Likewise, just as they brought order to chaos in biology, Hahnemann brought order to the chaos of medicine. So before him, disease was a shapeless form. Names were given without reason, and treatments were guesswork mixed with superstition. So in this chapter, we are learning step-by-step process, like how did Hahnemann, just like Linnaeus and Cuvier, who classified plants and animals, how did he classify the disease, the medicinal classification. So step 1, the background, a world without scientific order. So before Hahnemann, Robert begins with the examples of Linnaeus, botany, and Cuvier, zoology. Both men looked at an unorganized, confusing mass of data and gave it a structure. So, in the chapter, in step 2, Hahnemann as the Cuvier of medicine. Robert honors Hahnemann as the first to classify disease scientifically by their origin and nature, not just by symptoms or appearance. So, what is Robert is doing in this chapter? He's honoring Hahnemann, because Hahnemann, when during his time, where everything was in jumbled words and jumbled way, Hahnemann has classified it scientifically. He divided disease into 4 great divisions, as Cuvier had divided animal life into 4 great groups. So, just like Cuvier, he also divided disease into 4 great divisions. So, Robert says, since the principles of classification would fail unless these classifications were all embracive, it was the work of several years to trace the course of each disease to its origin. Don't worry about this quote. These are the quotes. If I'm using these quotations, it means that I have taken from the textbook. So, what does this sentence mean in the textbook of H.A.Robert? So, Hahnemann studied where disease begins and how it develops and what maintains it. So in step 3, the first division, external or mechanical disease. So the first division, there are mainly 4 divisions. The first division, what was it? External or mechanical diseases. This is the simplest class, disease arising purely from external or mechanical causes. Hahnemann listed like fractures, strain, burns, frostbite, sunstroke, dietary errors, external poisons like from plants or chemicals or fumes. Then occupational diseases like silicosis, all those kinds of things, trade related, environmental extremes. So these are diseases not arising from within the vital force but from without the external world. So it's because of from external influence or mechanical influence in step division 1. So what is the key understanding of this? They are not dynamic disease in the homeopathic sense. So we homeopathics, what we have to think, our medicine is dynamic. So this disease is not dynamic. They are self-limiting or self-curative once the cause is removed. So how to cure this? We have to remove the cause. So homeopathy's job here is only auxiliary. That is to aid nature, not to cure dynamically, because there is no relation and no dynamic role. So next is step 4. Removal of cause is the first step of cure. Here Robert emphasizes one of Hahnemann's most practical teachings. Let's see what's there in the text. The removal of the cause was the first step in the proper method of cure. Yes, we know that. So if a person is poisoned, remove the poison. If overworked, change the environment. If eating wrongly, then we should correct the diet. So this is pure Organon philosophy. We have to recall aphorisms 7 to 8 of the Organon chapter of the book. So again, step 4, removal of cause is the first step of cure, as said. So when the exciting or maintaining cause occasionalis is discovered and can be removed, the disease ceases of itself. This is the first duty of the physician, not to dose immediately, but to think back to the first cause. So if a person is saying, I have this problem, we have to think first. We shouldn't give a medicine right away. We have to think whether this is due to some other external cause. If there is external cause, what we have to do? We have to tell them, you have to change that job, or you have to change what you're doing right now. And if the person is saying that I want a medicine, yes, then we all know that we'll give 1 dose of placebo for the mental satisfaction. Then step 5, misunderstanding of Hahnemann's followers. So Robert generally criticizes. He doesn't rashly criticize. What he does, he generally criticizes how some accuse homeopaths of treating symptoms only. So he says, repeated claims have been made that followers of Hahnemann treat disease by the symptoms only. But it cannot be emphasized too strongly that Hahnemann made one classification dependent entirely on external cause. So this is there in the textbook. So what does this sentence mean? So it means true homeopathy is not blind to cause. we use symptoms for internal dynamic disease. But for external mechanical causes, we must first, what we have to do? We must remove the cause first. So homeopathy is not symptom worship, it's rational cause seeking, then dynamic healing. So even though there are some physicians who give just medicine for symptoms related, homeopathy is not symptom worship. It's a rational cause seeking, then dynamic healing. So first we have to remove the cause, then we have to give a dynamic medicine. Again, step 6, the birth of chronic disease understanding. Now first part is over. First was mechanical external cause, then comes the 3 psora, syphilis, psychosis, the turning point. Now comes the turning point. This is the bridge leading to Hahnemann's theory of chronic miasms. So here comes psora, syphilis and psychosis. Hahnemann noticed. What did he notice? Some patients, even after apparently perfect homeopathic cures, would fall ill again. Same or similar symptoms returning in cycle. So maybe you will think yourself, even you can happen to think like that. Like, I am taking medicines, I get cured. Then why again and again I am getting sick? What's the reason? Likewise, Hahnemann also thought. So what did he realize? He realized these were not new diseases, nor were the occurring of acute infection. So it's not recurrence, or they are not new diseases. They were expressions of a deeper underlying condition, a chronic miasmatic dyscrasia. So they are not new diseases, they are not recurrence of acute infection. Instead, they are deeper underlying condition. In simple terms, we can say as chronic miasmatic dyscrasia. That's what Hahnemann said. He began to see that beneath acute disease lies a fundamental disorder in the vital force, a chronic miasm. So he thought, irrespective of that acute disease, there is something inside or deeper inside our vital force, and that he called it as a chronic miasm. So this discovery was as great as Newton's law of gravitation for medicine. So as Newton has found law of gravitation, Hahnemann has found this. So now we are entering one of the most profound discoveries in medical philosophy, the origin of chronic miasms as explained by H.A.Robert through Hahnemann's own journey. So this chapter, Robert is saying through Hahnemann's journey, how did he found it? So the problem, why do disease keep coming back? The question that everyone's have in their mind. So Hahnemann noticed something very peculiar in his practice. Even when he treated patients perfectly by giving the exact simillimum, the patient would get well for some time, but after a few weeks or months, the same kind of suffering returned. That's why when you give medicine, the next week the patient will come. So we cannot cure them completely. That's what struck Hahnemann. What happened? Why it happens like that? Why I can't cure them completely? Sometimes the same symptoms and sometimes slightly altered ones, but the disease was not truly gone. So however, whatever, whenever he tries, the disease comes back again and again, and this made him to think. And so Hahnemann asked, if the acute symptoms have disappeared but the disease returns, what is the real seat of the sickness? So I gave the medicine and that symptoms went and that person got cured. But again, what is that tendency? Why that person is having that disease again? So there will be some real or deepened disease inside. That's what Hahnemann said. So this question opened the door to one of the greatest discoveries in medical thought. And he reasoned, if these recurring symptoms are only a fragment of the disease, then there must be something deeper, hidden and continuous without the organism that causes these periodic eruptions. So behind each acute illness like fever, cold, inflammation, there lies a primitive chronic force, something in the vital force itself that has been permanently deranged. That's what he found. So Hahnemann's aim, what was his aim? Find a remedy that cures both the surface and the depth. So he's a compassionate and some kind, humble person, isn't it? So he wanted to cure the sick completely, not just surface but also depth. So once he saw this, Hahnemann's mission became clear, to find a remedy which would meet the acute condition and the hidden condition at the same time. So that means not only should the remedy relieve the visible disease, but it should also cure the underlying dynamic disorder that gave rise to it. So to do that, he has to study thousands of natural cases like natural chronic disease, then he has to study artificial disease produced by medicines or healthy people like drug proving, and he got a lot to study, and he looked for a similarity between the symptoms of natural disease and the effects of medicine that could imitate and remove such states. And this is how he began to trace miasmatic origins and develop deeper remedies. Again, 4 great groups of disease. What were they? Hahnemann ultimately grouped all the disease into 4 great classes. The first one, as we all know, mechanical or external disease. So the fractures, burns, diateras, poisons, frostbite, all these purely external and not dynamic. That is first one. Second one, psora. Psora, the mother of chronic disease. Non-venereal miasm, the fundamental dyscrasia behind most chronic illness. Third, syphilis, venereal miasm number 1, resulting from the syphilitic poison. Number 4, what was it? Psychosis, venereal miasm number 2, resulting from the gonorrheal poison. So these are the 4 great classes: mechanical external disease, psora, syphilis and psychosis. So after separating external mechanical disease, the remaining 3 were called miasms. So as it was not dynamic, he just kept it aside, and the other 3 he called it as miasm, meaning deep-seated dynamic roots of chronic sickness. So what does miasm mean? So we know all those. So what do you mean by miasm? Robert now pauses to explain this important term, because this term is really important for homeopaths, because the English word miasm is often misunderstood. According to common definition, a miasm is defined as polluting exhalations or malarial poisons. So that was the old idea. A bad air or noxious vapor causing illness. That was the miasmatic meaning. It was in the dictionary. So, but Hahnemann didn't mean that. What does he mean? So when he used miasm in German miasma, he's a German, isn't it? So in German miasma, he meant something much deeper. A dynamic disease producing principle that infects and alters the vital force, a sort of inherited or acquired taint that persists in the constitution. So in today's scientific language, Robert says it might better be called a stigma, a lasting mark upon the constitution. So in scientific language, what does Robert say? It might better be called as a stigma, a lasting mark upon the constitution. So the word stigma, the modern understanding. So let's learn what is stigma. Robert beautifully explains in this way. The effect of either virus affecting the primordial cells cast a stigma or blight upon the developing cell that is nearly ineffaceable. Okay, what does that mean? That means when a person acquires syphilis or gonorrhea, the virus disturbs the innermost cellular vitality. You have to be careful, the innermost cellular vitality, and that is called as the primordial germ cells. So these primordial germ cells, those are the innermost cellular vitality. So there will be some disturbance in that, and that disturbance, that dynamic alteration, can continue through life even when no physical infection is seen. So it can even pass to generation and to generation. So that disturbance is the main cause. So it can even be inherited by children as constitutional weakness and deformities and chronic disease tendencies. And this is the stigma, the miasmatic tendency. So if you're having some psychotic miasma in your or syphilis, then it means your past generations had this effect, had this virus. So Robert uses the modern biological idea of cellular imprint to explain what Hahnemann meant dynamically, a permanent distortion of the life force. So now let's understand what is psychosis, gonorrheal miasm. Now Robert defines psychosis as the fig-wort disease. The word psychosis comes from the Greek psychon, meaning fig. One of its meaning is fig-like wart, because gonorrheal patients often develop wart-like growths. So Hahnemann observed, chronic effects of the gonorrheal virus often lead to fig-warts, chronic rheumatis and catarrh conditions, glandular swellings and overgrowths, all bearing this peculiar mark. So he called the miasm psychosis or the fig-wort disease. Venereal miasms. We know there are two venereal miasms. Number one is syphilis and number two is psychosis. So in his early study, Hahnemann grouped both venereal diseases, syphilis and gonorrhea psychosis, so together under one heading, the venereal miasm. But later, after careful observation, he saw there were two distinct types of chronic infection and dynamic action. So even though he thought it as together as venereal miasm, he later thought to change it. You know why? Because it has two different types. In this chart, in this table, you can see what are the two different types. So syphilis, number one, from syphilitic poison, it's the origin. But psychosis is from gonorrheal poison. The main features of syphilis is destructive, ulcerative, corrosive, like think about acids, like destructive, ulcerative, corrosive, all these. But psychosis, it is proliferative, overgrowth, catarrhal, like growth. Growth is the main thing in psychosis. Then deep effect is tendency to destruction of tissue, bones, blood, nerves. So everything is a destruction, like volcano. Again, psychosis is tendency to warty, growths, glandular swellings, excess tissue, everything in excess, growth. That is psychosis. So he recognized them as two separate dynamic stigmas impressed upon the constitution. So that's about this chapter in part A. Thank you for listening. I hope you have understood this chapter. Have a great day.